Mr. Tom?
How you doing, Matt?
Oh man, I'm fired up all the time. How are you?
I'm fired up, but also equally tired.
Yeah. No, I just got back from. Funny enough, from the opposite of health, which is a cruise.
Wow.
Yes.
See, we went to Puerto Rico and we were pretty clean there. So.
Yes. Yeah. I did not do that.
Oh, I don't blame you.
I was good. I mean, I can't eat at cruise levels, anymore.
I mean, the amount of the availability of food is kind of almost disgusting.
It's gross. Yeah. And actually, it's funny. I thought about our show, like all the time on the boat, because the funny thing about it is that we take it for granted almost, what you and I do all the time, which is we read ingredient labels. We, we're on mailing lists. We listen to podcasts.
We're on no-fly lists.
Right. Right. So like our day-to-day is investigatory. Like it's curious, right? Like we're out there doing a thing. And that's what led to us having these conversations. When I was on a cruise ship, it's literally the opposite. It's like, how little can I know about the world or my health? Like if there was a race to see how little you could know, cruise ships are leading the pack. Like,
I would say they want you in that little floating village mentality.
Yeah.
There's nothing outside of this boat.
This boat is all that's left of Earth. Spend your money and eat food accordingly.
Gamble and eat ice cream at 3 a.m. from the self-serve machine without a hole. Just go right out of the thing.
and it made me realize, like, we are really fortunate to not. That's their high water mark, like a cruise, right? Like, if that's their high water mark, what's the low water mark look like?
Like this reminds me, and I'm really not trying to crap on anybody, here, but
I'm
like
not crapping on them.
This reminds me of when Doug Brackman, I'm like, and you were in the session with me, and I'm like, I'm just a normal dude. He goes, you're not normal.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? I don't really I just kind of want to live my life. And he goes, no. Normal people don't listen to NPR. And I was like, all right, like if it's on, I'll listen to it, but I don't necessarily. And then he goes, no. You want to know what normal is? Right? What did he say? Go to Disney World and stand in line.
Yeah. Oh,
and then he followed it up with like, no, go to Walmart.
Yeah. That's exactly
and I was
what
like,
don't
thinking. that just stop.
Yeah, I know that conversation well, actually. Yeah, but he's right?
He's
like,
right.
That's,
Yeah,
like,
that's
on.
Other people are not thinking like that, and that's not necessarily their own fault or a flaw with them. It's just ours is to question why, I guess.
It underscores something. I mean, one is, like I said, it makes me feel very fortunate to be in a position that we are in, right?
It is a privileged position.
That we have a curiosity in it. We have the means to pursue that curiosity. The fact that we have a platform now to like talk about that curiosity, like that, those are all very cool things. What it also demonstrates is how important conversations like this are to the survival of our species. Because, not to over dramatize this, but I think while cruising might represent an extreme end of the spectrum, right, if you will, it certainly is the almost inevitable conclusion of a society that doesn't give a shit about the process of getting to idiocracy, right? Like
it really feels like that scene in WALL-E.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. Right? And so you're floating around, just getting fatter, and
I'm not getting out of this floating beach chair.
Yeah, right. But like, when you look at, like, I'm looking around, right, like while I'm there, and I'm thinking, like, all right, well, what of these people like is going to get disrupted by AI? And something else interesting occurred to me, that probably not that many. And why? Because every conversation I got into with every person, we're talking about police officers, firemen, EMTs, teachers, carpenters.
Is that who you were talking to on
That's
the
who I was
cruise?
talking to. Yeah, people that I met on the cruise. I'm like, you know what's funny?
They're going to be doing,
those are all things you'll probably still be doing once AI has taken all the rest of our jobs, right? Like, but like the reality is a carpenter, an electrician, a teacher. These are things that we're not likely going to have computer analogs for.
I think at some point I could see teachers going. I think even carpenters, and they won't completely lose their jobs, but they'll have AI telling them how to do everything.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, but I see that just being like buying
more like an integration.
Saw. It's like you're not getting replaced. I mean, AI might be able to like send dimensions. Like you might be able to put on a pair of like goggles and look at a kitchen and then have those measurements. How
everything is going,
and see how everything is going to fit, and then send dimensions to a fabricator directly from site. No measuring, no like laser beams, no nothing. That kind of stuff, all absolutely. But that's not going to replace a carpenter. Somebody's still got to put on the goggles and know where to put the fucking cabinet, right? You know what I mean? Like that's not, and have the conversation with the homeowner and be like, all right, do you want it over here? Probably don't because there's a door there, like all the stuff that humans are going to talk about. And, maybe someday long past that goes away too. But I'm just thinking like immediate horizon, accountants are probably not long for this world, but
I gotta say, it's kind of funny when they know how much we owe for taxes. I don't know why we quite like. I like my accountant. I'm not saying anything bad, but like it's if they know how much we owe and we're just supposed to figure it out on our own. It seems like there's extra steps in there.
Yeah, there's a few extra.
There's a few extra steps in there.
Well, and but like that's a job that could easily be outsourced to an AI, like, right? And like, yes, you probably would want to talk to a knowledgeable human to ask sort of questions.
What the right questions are, yeah.
Honestly, though, the moment we start and I think this will happen inside of 2024, I think, but you'll have models built around all the major industries, right? Like, so accounting's going to have a model built that gets licensed to every accountant that's out there. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be able to say, like, what's the new tax code or whatever, because you're going to have a learning process by which that is updated. New tax code, you upload the PDF, it synthesizes it, it knows all the answers. And then you're going to start seeing, like, one accountant could be the answerer for 200
thousands of people,
thousands and thousands of people, because, like, there's no army of people. Basically, you could even connect that to a chatbot on a computer, and basically now you could bypass literally everything. You can give that away as a loss leader to get people in the door just to do the filing of the paperwork. And like, if you're not like a business owner, divorced, trust fund, any of the specialty situations,
you could sailing make right through,
bazillions of dollars, right?
and charging people a couple of bucks,
and charging people nothing, right? Like, and so, and that's going to happen. Like, and this is what it's funny when I tell my clients, I said, you don't have to get into AI, but tell you what, your competition isn't either. But you know who is? The 21-year-old who is in your profession, who hasn't even started their career, who's fucking resourceful, got all the time in the world, and knows that they just got a college degree in something that ain't going to mean shit in 5 years because fucking AI is taken over. And those guys are everywhere right now, like everywhere. And it's awesome to see, but like the next revolution of business is going to be very different. Like I don't think it's going to be this at all. And that's why when I look at all these health startups and stuff, like you look at them and I'm like, these guys, and you followed them too, but like printing of hearts and like stem cells gone fucking crazy. They actually got through FDA. Did you see on the stem cell thing, which is a CRISPR basically derivative for sickle cell anemia?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
We talked about that teenager that they did that for like a long time ago, right? Yeah. So it's made it through trials and it's out the door, man. It's like, it's there.
It's pretty crazy because that is one application of, once you have the technology, you alter it based on the disease and the desired outcome, and that can be changed to fix so many different things.
Everything. I mean, dude, remember when CRISPR came out, they win the Nobel Prize in botany. And the biggest thing that comes out of that is like the 2,800 or whatever the number's up to diseases that can be cured by CRISPR. Like, it has nothing to do with plants at all. Like,
yeah,
you know,
it's funny. Like I told you, I was reading that one book. Like we had the guest on with Sweat.
Oh yeah.
And Justin was on, and we were talking about it. And I immediately ordered that book while we were talking to him. And there was a free, like, Amazon Unlimited Kindle version of Methylene Blue, and it just so happens that I have Methylene Blue probably laying on the floor somewhere, fell off my desk. But so I'm like, oh, let me read that. And I didn't like the way the guy was approaching science. He really fucking hacked up a lot of studies and made some claims that the study didn't demonstrate the way he said it did. It didn't, have the issue. But he started talking about basically how much genetic engineering is going to be a failure. And I'm like, bro, you're not even looking at the same.
Why does he say it's going to be a failure?
Well, because I think what he was trying to say was like, he was pointing to early studies and showing that, oh, look, but they did this in one person and they lived for 6 years and then they died because the genetic code that they altered didn't stay. And it's like, yeah, that's unfortunate.
But weren't they going to die anyway?
Yeah. Some of these diseases were, well, I mean, this is the same guy that said, hey, look, this study killed 11 babies. And I'm like, the control group, 9 of them died. So, you weren't really talking about a big number. And statistically, 11 and 9 aren't that far apart. It's like, yes, babies dying, horrible. But you only seem to have compassion for the ones that got the treatment, because the treatment failed. So it's funny that he made this argument. And I'm like, you're not even looking at that right. You're not even looking at CRISPR. You're talking about like early on genetic engineering.
But you know what else is also about that? Like, which is going to be the problem that only our generation has to deal with. Like my 15-year-old son, probably not as much. Mm-hmm. But like, there's we talked about this with the COVID vaccines, right? Like, and this is just my opinion. It could be, disagree with me, but I think people's biggest problem with that, because no one ever bitched about polio vaccines. And I know that's a cliche thing to say, but follow me for a second. Nobody bitched about polio vaccines or any of the other shit that we've gotten for years. They all gladly stick their arm out for that shit. I think the thing about COVID was the fact that it got here out of nowhere in instant time compared to every other vaccine we've ever known about. Right?
But you mentioned COVID, right? And not COVID, polio. And polio was, it'd been around forever, the disease itself, right? No treatment seemed to be, people, I have actually treated a few, I doubt they're alive anymore, but people that got polio as a kid before the vaccine, right? And their legs messed up. It's not the right size. It doesn't work. They're walking with a cane. They're walking with a walker, whatever it is. So I think people actually saw that. I also think there was a huge amount of discrediting, and we've talked about this in previous COVID shows, where like, these studies normally take 10 to 15 years to get people to even have the volume of volunteers. And when you had an international, pandemic, you had people lining up going, let me try it. So you got the volume of study people. And were people injured with the vaccine? Yeah, but people are injured with every vaccine. And
that's my point.
It's they sensationalized it. And the people that have the injuries from the vaccine, I would say 99% of them are still alive versus, like the likelihood that they may have died from the COVID itself.
So but see what you're talking about, just to break it down
even more.
For not science people, right? Or people familiar with the studies or how that process worked. You're talking about the scientific hurdle as it is set for vaccine research and development and deployment. Has 2 major variables, right? That the people don't appreciate enough to have this conversation. This is what drove me fucking crazy about having this conversation with people, was that they didn't understand why I was so annoyed about it. They thought I was just some crazy liberal, which might also be true. But in this case, I was like, your bitch is that it went too fast and it used AI to do it, right? These are the two foundational moments that people are like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with this because of that. The too fast is only informed because of the fact that we know scientifically you need a critical mass of respondents
of patients,
to know, which took a lot of time to recruit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And polio, while popular, wasn't nearly as popular as COVID, right?
Well,
and
it
so,
wasn't as contagious. Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so when people got polio, the people who could even like raise their hand for this weren't even near, like we're not even in the same fucking universe as the amount of people that could do it with COVID. So to your point, yes, that happened, but nobody understands why that's a critically important piece of information when judging how you feel about the technology. Because we did exactly what we've always done. That part didn't change. It needed a certain mass. We know this because epidemiologically speaking, it's never different. Like, it's just like, this is where we've
studied enough people. Like, we know the results are this well.
And that number, before any fucking nerd out there jumps down my throat about that, what I mean by that is, like, the numbers aren't crazy different, right? Like, for somebody to feel confident about a drug, and I'm sure there's a number in the FDA's mind or on paper, there's a number, 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, whatever the number is. Once you go over that, no matter what we're talking about, you're considered this, right?
I also feel like that population that is anti-vax, that is like oh God, this was all a government hoax, or that there's no amount, like, you could have 100% success rate. You could have every patient walking out there that had got vaccinated feeling better than they did before the vaccine, even if they weren't sick. And they still will go, there's no way in hell I'm putting that in me. Remember when they said, oh, they're going to put a microchip in you?
Oh, dude. So, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about the fringe people,
but you hear enough of that, and it makes those people that are like, well, I don't think doctors are dumb.
Right. Yeah.
Go like, I don't know. My uncle, he seems to be pretty hesitant about this.
Yeah. Right. Well, there is that.
So I do think but I also feel like we politicized that when that's a public health thing. Like that has always been weird to me.
But
like,
here, all the things. Sorry, not to cut you off, but but you're not wrong on any of these things. But what I was talking about isn't really what the politicalization of this topic is. Yeah. Our human reaction to what I was talking about, right? What I'm talking about is this is moving at a speed that, in order to actually remain curious and open-minded about any of these topics, you have to be I don't know if smart's the right word, but like, you have to have a certain level of cognitive capacity.
We're going to piss off so many people with this.
No, it's fine. And but like,
all of you are stupid.
It's not stupidity. It really isn't. It's really what it is like, you have to be able to accept multiple truths that are valid at the same time.
It's not a binary decision.
Correct.
Or a binary amount of information.
Here's the thing. The less capacity you have for holding simultaneously, possibly juxtaposed ideas to be true at the same time, that's not a skill everybody has. So that's why I was struggling with the right word. I'm like, it's not smart.
God, what is that term now?
You know what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly. To be able to hold multiple pieces of information that may represent different,
like, you could go left and right. You could accept that the right answer is which way to go at the end of the hallway, and it could be both left and right. Right? Like,
it depends on where you're trying to go. Yeah.
Well, right. Like, and so that's the point. Like, the world is not great at that anymore. And we have this.
I doubt it ever was. I always feel like, no, because like, I mean, it's not like, even when we talk about like the great philosophers, let's talk about like Plato and Socrates and those kind of things. It wasn't like every dude even fucking listened to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're like, oh, that guy's real smart. Yeah, fuck that guy.
But actually, let's use that as an example, because it was far enough back where I think the the difference between the two types of people would be more pronounced back then.
Yeah.
You have Plato on one side, who clearly very wealthy, very educated, very aristocratic, very connected, like top 0.5%, like up at the top.
Yeah.
The regular Joe Blow in Roman Empire land was wildly uneducated, broke, and basically
not literate. Yeah.
Not literate, and probably had one of, if not the most closed mind.
I hope we have a Greek scholar.
I would love
listening,
to talk to that person.
And they're like, no, you guys are totally wrong about this.
But my point is like the philosophical difference between those two groups of people is the same type of difference we have today, just at a different scale, right?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if that is even a different scale. You know, like
that's
what was it? Yeah, you know, like there's more of us certainly, but there's vastly more availability to quality research.
But that also makes people doubt it. And COVID vaccine that we were just talking about is a prime example.
Yeah.
We used AI. Why? Because
it was faster.
And everybody decided to pull out their giant metaphorical scissors and clip all of the red tape so that we were allowed to use a tool that we should have used all along. But why didn't we use AI? Because people, like when it comes
they don't trust it. Yeah.
When it comes to challenging your own belief system with stuff that is impactful as like death, let's just say, you are just really, people don't automatically shift. And that is not crazy. But to me, where I part ways is like, if you can't even explore it as an option and have a conversation about it to talk through the efficacy or possibility of it being real, then that's where you lose me, right? Like, I am happy as hell to disagree with you, but we have to at least be able to have a conversation.
I don't think... It's so funny because I see people clinging to beliefs and feelings more than like you can't show somebody the data, you can't show somebody the facts and change their mind if they say, oh, I just believe this, right? I mean, how do you counteract that? It's a belief. It's not rooted in anything that even has to be logical.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's a big part of the problem now, where it's like, you know, I keep mentioning Bio Lane on this podcast, and like hopefully we can land him on our show sometime. But like, he goes out there and he goes, look, the data doesn't say that. You know, and somebody posted that like, oh my God, look at how dangerous the artificial sweeteners is, and he's like, oh shit, we're back on this again. You know, and he's like, no, that study doesn't say what you think it says.
Right.
You know,
well,
it's like,
I mean, anybody, there's been, we've probably had that conversation on this show 100 times, let alone fucking the world.
We should AI all the shows. We should upload them all and see what we talk about the most. I think it's going to be like psychedelics, AI, probably Hitler. 1 and 2. I don't know which one. And then COVID.
Hitler will be 5.
Hitler's going to be somewhere on there. Fascism.
But that's my point, man. Like, you know, we're moving at such a crazy pace, but like my biggest fear, and again, just to bring us back home a second, I think we're the only generation that's going to have to deal with this, because like by the time, if not my kids, for sure their kids.
Yeah.
This shit is going to be totally normal. And so like, they're
you know, I mean, those digital natives, I mean, they're already used to like having technology go past Moore's law, right? I mean, they're not even on the same curve as us.
No, they're not.
Yeah, you know, so like, we're like, oh, next year the phone will be a little bit faster. No, next year you won't even have a fucking phone.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's right up. Like, you just put a thing up your nose and that's it. It's done.
Yeah. And people are like, my dad was like, God, what happens if the machines take over? I'm like, you'll probably live a much better life.
You won't have to worry about bridges getting crashed into.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was crazy, wasn't it?
That was like, I came down into the lobby of the hotel we were in, and I'm like, hey, that bridge looks like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, God damn. And the poor girl at the front desk was like, is that near you? I'm like, yeah, about 10 minutes.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. And we were on a cruise ship, actually on a Carnival cruise ship, and a Carnival cruise ship left Baltimore Port on Sunday and was stranded at sea with no way of returning.
Couldn't get back in. Yeah.
Couldn't get back in.
Wow.
So and the ship I was on has until the end of May. And then in June, it was relocating to Baltimore.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was an interesting time to be on a cruise ship that was so like, and a cruise ship on a cruise line that is doubly impacted by the Baltimore Bridge collapse.
Yeah. It's so crazy. And it was like, Puerto Rico is such a weird place where everybody you talk to, they're proud to be Puerto Rican, but they're like, yeah, I lived in Chicago for 2 decades.
Yeah. Of
like,
course.
Okay. Yeah. They were all like, you okay back home? I'm like, I was here. I don't know.
Yeah, we're all good, man. I made it. Yeah. But real quick, what do you think happens when like the first person younger than us probably statistically is like, you know what? We're just the needle's moved. We're now past this. So now they're almost mad if a COVID vaccine doesn't get fabricated in a week. Right? They're like,
God, that's like when Amazon first got popular, and I'm like, what do you mean I gotta wait 3 days for something?
Yeah, right.
Are you kidding me? I paid for the Prime. It should be here tomorrow.
Don't you know that I'm a Prime member?
I'm a Prime member.
Yeah.
Release that series now.
Yeah, right. But see, that's my point, man. Like, you're in my friends and everybody older than us. Like, the COVID 2.0 comes out, and, a couple things are going to happen. They're going to be like, I'm not going, we're not locking down again. I'm going to work. That's definitely happening. And
but like, I almost feel like that group is going to be like, all right. Yeah. Everybody else is going to go, okay, you do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, maybe. But
remember when you stockpiled all those guns and built a bunker?
Yeah. Right.
Like, that's where you should be now, asshole.
Yeah. Right.
You go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you spent all this time prepping for right now.
I'm down for my freedom. I'm like, yeah, asshole. Okay, yeah.
All
right.
but like when people give into this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's going to be better. Either we're going to be gone and the earth can finally get over this little thing that, it happened, or we're all going to just figure it out because, like, this is the tool that we need to figure it out. Do you know how many articles that have been pumped into my feed in the last, 2 weeks about engineering climate change? Do you know why that is? Because we have the technology
to do it.
Is been here for about a year.
Yeah.
Like, people have had tools that are this powerful for, since about the beginning of 23.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking off. And the really, 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 really smart people of the planet are 3 years in to studying how to fucking engineer your way out of a climate change that we are too fucking ridiculous to fucking fix on our own.
I think that's been the thing, but I remember watching this show, and I probably referenced it on here on Netflix, like Who Killed the Electric Car? Like, we were ready to go with electric cars in the 70s. There's a fucking car desert, a car cemetery out in the desert somewhere where there's all of these electric cars that are just covered in sand that are just, they never made it off the lot because the oil companies killed it, right? And we see it again. Like, we're all drinking out of paper straws because we can't get a few corporations to clean their shit up, right? So they started this myth of a carbon footprint, like it's our fault. Like, oh, you guys drive to work too much. It's like, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, yeah.
There's 100 companies making 70% of the global pollution, and it's my fault.
Right, right. No, it's well, but here's the thing: like that information, though, is part of the same process I was just talking about, which is everybody is looking at data differently than we ever used to. Right?
Yeah.
5 years ago, 10 years ago, the thought of actually looking at every decision through a data only lens would have sounded like fucking you're ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the data exists now too. We've been tracking it.
Sure, we've been tracking it. But here's the thing: we also have. I'm an idiot, and I could go to PubMed right now and download 30 articles on gastrointestinal distress from cholera, or fucking some ridiculous. I mean, pick some fucking obscure topic, and I can download 100 papers and feed them into a Chat GPT, and ask it a whole bunch of random questions, and it's gonna fucking do it.
And it's gonna please explain this to me like I'm 5, right?
And
you'll be able to have the best answer that you'll ever get.
Right. And here's the thing: you know how many people actually do that? Single digits.
Let me tell you, I literally, as we're talking, I have 2 AI tabs open right now. I have Claude and I have Gemini.
Tom, you're so cute. You have 2. I have. Hold on, I'm gonna count. All right, hold on.
I'm like, can you help me write this?
On one window, hold on. On this window here, I've got 4.
Well, I mean, you're doing this. You're getting into this,
man. I don't know. There's a dozen on this one, and they're all different. This one's actually only about logins for all the AI services that I currently subscribe to. So yeah, and that's just what I'm willing to look into right this second. But yes, I'm like. No, but here that's exactly the point though. Like we are bucking against our own evolution. This is like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Like,
well, but that's what's going to happen, and you're always going to have that group of people.
But that group of people is the entire fucking United States. Like that's the problem. It's not just.
Is it more of that most people won't catch on, or is it more that, you know what I'm saying? Are we just early adopters? Because
so we are definitely early adopters, but my point is that it's everywhere. Like the reason why our knowledge about this is ramping up. I mean, I know you and I look at a lot of random shit. So like maybe we're definitely, I mean, not maybe, we are absolutely not the norm on there.
Yeah.
But the reason we have such ready access to this isn't because we're fucking Nostradamus. It's because
it's literally, you don't have to look far.
Like, it's fucking everywhere, man. Like you don't have to look past the edge of your nose to find it. So if you don't know about it, it's because you're not looking at all anywhere about anything.
Well, I also feel like, and this is part of and I'm not trying to go conspiracy theory here, but if you're getting your TV news and you're getting your newspaper news and you're getting your radio news and that's where you're getting it, they're just trying to scare you to do shit, you know?
Sure.
Like they're not talking about like, hey, look, there's literally something that could fix so many fucking problems.
Right.
And it's thousands of people all over the place are using it right now.
And that's why one of the things I want to do for the show is I want to create that on the site is like, use I got a really cool, like, client that's like helping me play around with some ideas, and I'm going to do it for them, but I can reuse it on our site. But
yeah.
I'm like, what if we just created a playground that was bringing data that's here into our sphere, organizing it, presenting it in a way that makes sense, and then talking about that, because like the reality is that we have 50,000 foot buckets, right? Like, life extension is definitely one thing, right? Mitochondrial health, we've talked about a lot on here. God knows psychedelics is going to be on that list.
And I think they're all, at least when we talk about them, and somewhere in my head, they all make sense. They're all interconnected, right? It's not, we're talking about them in individual buckets just for clarity's sake. Let's say it's much more of a mesh than say buckets, right?
Right. Yeah, it is, but at the same time, it's also like if you think about it, they're all sort of deep dives on their own, right?
Yeah,
like,
they have to be, but what I'm saying is that neural map that ends up getting built psychedelics is, yes, it's over here. It's with mental health and these kind of things. But at the same time, how's that going to affect your ability to look at life extension stuff? And how is that life extension affected by mitochondrial health, right? There's a 1-to-1 ratio there somewhere too, right? So I do think there's so much overlap in these buckets that you touch one thing and you're touching 10, right? You know?
Yeah, but that's my point, is like the data's always been there, right? And like if you look at the world, right, like the individual people, the content creators, like research people, you know, doctors and all that neat stuff, like those people create data for their own research, right? So, and if you look at like a PubMed or anything like that,
and it's very niche, it's very specific.
Correct.
It's within. Hey, not only were you studying this one thing, we're studying this one aspect of this one thing in this small group.
Yes, right. And so, like, if you can get all of those together, and like, you know, in traditional terms, we call, you know, you call that a meta-analysis,
like
right?
Meta-analysis,
Like,
systematic review. Yeah.
Right. Guess what the best meta-analysis ever is? A fucking computer that knows all of it. Like,
all of it.
You know, so it's like kind of like, and I think that's what we're starting to see out there in the world. We're like, you know what? When you look at making something that's just really focused on that one thing, we have been collecting a fuck ton of data for a really fucking long time. Like, and so the transformers were the things to come along that basically gave us like a real shot at managing that data, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if you could make your own GPTs, and you're going to see this in everything, then basically you can start making much cooler products that have ever existed up till now, because you can start asking hyper specific questions, right? Like on this show, like if I was thinking, like if we had like a dashboard where you can see all these topics, it's pulling in, like, look, we know the big markers, right? Like psychedelics are going to break through the mental walls that people have. All the shit I was just talking about earlier today, and we were talking about with, you know, bias on this show tonight. Yeah. Like all of that you get over with psychedelics in one way, shape, or form, right? Like people who are open to psychedelics, who really explore it, give them a chance, they never come out of that going, you know what happened after I took a bunch of LSD? The world got smaller. Like no one ever said that.
What's his name? God, there's one. Ari, what's his last name? There's one comedian that said, he said, he comes out, he goes, you know why Republicans hate drugs? He goes, because nobody does drugs and wants to be more conservative.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's like, I just did a whole bunch of LSD and now I need to control women's reproductive rights.
Right. Yeah, that said nobody ever. Right. Yeah, like 100%. But that's my point, man. Like if we had something like, the world doesn't really have these things. Like you have news sources, but like a news source is one thing. They're reporting on their agenda.
And you're absolutely right. It's not just, I had somebody years ago and now I would say this is even more slanted than it should be, that he liked to watch news from outside of the country talking about the country.
I've heard about a lot of people
Al Jazeera, whether it was BBC, whether it was, whatever platform it was, because normally they would just list what happened. Draw your own conclusions. This guy said this guy said that. We have audio of that, but here's what appears to have happened. And now it's so slanted where we even use words like, oh, this person was destroyed by this, or that person said this, and, they're starting a war. And it's like, no, that's not what any of that was. You've sensationalized it so you get my attention.
Sure. And that's what I'm saying. Like the news articles are like not super useful because
it's all clickbait.
It's all clickbait and it's all agenda for whatever their thing is. And it's like, and it's funny, like I found this like source that rates news sources from left to right. And it's funny that rating system exists, because in theory, you're a news source. Like
you should be smack dab in the middle all the time.
I shoot you in the face. I shot some homeless person in the face, and I'm in jail, and now I'm in the news. Like, that's not a political statement. I shot somebody in the face, fucking now I'm in jail. Like, that happened. Like, it's not, like, having to be rated on how I presented that information, left or right leaning. You got to be kidding me.
Well,
right?
but you have to. I mean, I hate to say it, but God, I actually get an email once a week where they're like, blind spot is what the one I get is called. And it'll say, this is a blind spot for the left. This is a blind spot for the right. Right. And they'll report on an article, and you're like, a lot of times you're like, wow, I didn't see either of those.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I didn't see the one on the far left. I didn't see the one on the far right. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the part that's weird about our world, right? Like, like, it very much does come down. Do you see a green dress or a blue dress? Like, like, you're like, okay, I don't know. I feel like you're going to judge me if I answer this question either way, and so I don't know. But anyway, we're here. But I think what's going to be interesting is to see how people dig up new information now that we have the tools that we have, because now we have two things that are acting in a real powerful way. We have a bunch of people like you and I who are out there being like, look, we've been playing with this stuff for a decade plus. Like, we have certain sort of ideas about why things happen or what happens if you do X, Y. It's, it's always evolving, but we kind of have a direction. What happens if you have a highly educated direction and a whole bunch of fucking really sophisticated tools to help you figure out more about those things?
Yeah. I mean, you move exponentially faster.
Correct. Which means you can get more ideas, which means you can do more things. Like, so it's like, that book, Moonwalking with Einstein, I quote this book all the time, because like he basically was in there. He's like, new memories can only exist to the extent you have old memories to bind them to. And so quite literally, the more you know, the more you can know. Like, and it's basically like, the more data you can bring into your head, the more you could bind it to. Then the next time when you learn more information, you've got so many more binding posts you can attach that data, which means you remember more. Like, it's just like this crazy, fascinating cycle that I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But those that go back full circle, that's not the people that go on cruises, right? Like, and so like when you look at it, and to Doug's point, that's more normal.
That is more normal. Yeah.
Like, and so I just think it's going to be an interesting spot, specifically in the health, because I think what you're going to have, in fact, I don't even think, I'm reasonably confident what you're going to have is a group of people that could almost literally live forever, and everybody else, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, and actually there was a fun interview with, what's the British guy, the light-skinned black guy, British guy. He's got a really popular podcast. Great podcast. I can't remember his name. Really awesome show. He's had everybody on, and it's like very cool. But he had Noah Harari on, and talking about the clickbait was another war is coming. And when I listened to it, it was like an hour and 50 minutes long or something. It's a really long show, but it was awesome because basically, and Noah Harari is the Sapiens guy, lest anyone not know who he is, but this guy's probably the most well-researched guy on human anthropology like that's ever existed. I mean, Sapiens goes quite literally from protozoa to modern civilization. It's fucking, it's quite a thorough examination of the human condition. But he was saying, he's like, AI is not good or bad. It's just a thing that's here, but it does create the very real possibility that we have another evolution of humanity. For a while, Homo sapien and Neanderthals were coexisting and interbreeding. So like there was no big deal. And actually, I don't know if you read that article, but they now have credible evidence to say there was as many as 8 hominoids species living on Earth at the same time. Can you fucking imagine?
It's kind of crazy. Well, because even Aboriginal people from Australia.
Yeah.
Have I believe it's called Denisonian. So they didn't have Neanderthal DNA, but they have another
version
of another humanoid.
Right.
And it is like, God, man, what was that like?
Can you imagine?
I mean, like,
but I guess it's the same
like
as
Lord
like
of the Rings.
But I think
literally.
Isn't that like a Chihuahua walking down the street and seeing like a bulldog, and then
No, it's like a Chihuahua walking down the street and seeing like a Tasmanian tiger, which is like a distant cousin.
It's not even the same. Like Neanderthal and Homo sapiens weren't that far off.
They were far enough off, and they're God, they were.
But I mean, they were recreating
with
one another.
They were, but that's the crazy thing, because they have to be. Yeah, you're right.
Like they were.
Now I got to look into that, because they did have viable offspring that could reproduce.
In fact, like
because we have Neanderthal in us.
Yeah, I have I think 8% Neanderthal or something like that. I mean, it's like, and I honestly don't remember that entirely, so don't at all quote me on that. But I have no idea. But it said this is your percentage of Neanderthal whatever,
DNA, on 20,
whatever the number
stuff,
was.
Yeah.
It was. They have a number is the point. Whatever that number is.
It's funny. The whiter people are, the more Neanderthal they tend to have in them.
But see, that shit fascinates the hell out of me, because what if you take Noah Harari at face value, what he says is that we'll have another jump like that, right? Like, so we'll have cyborg, like fast forward Musk's thing right now. Like, what does that look like in its fully realized form? Well, like, we had that conversation about Upload on this show where, if that gets fully fleshed out, the thought of dying is no longer even a fucking issue. In fact, might be preferred, right? Like, I mean,
I have a body that can fail me if I can exist in eternity. Yeah.
So, at a fucking country club, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's no, what we find problematic right now.
Yeah.
Is only problematic because of the mental confines that we find ourselves in, right? Like, it's not reality, because
no, not at all.
Back up 100 years and like, we're both humans, but guess what?
We've been working in a farm. Yeah.
like zero resemblance to that person
today. Yeah. I mean, God, if we showed up now in, let's say, 1900,
yeah,
with the technology we have on us.
Correct.
Not even like, you pull out a phone that's functioning like that, people's heads would explode.
Heads would explode. They'd like, what the fuck is
not
happening?
Even like, as much as we all love our cell phones, that's not even the coolest tech out there.
No, and the point there is too, is like, you look at like, people got all bent out of shape about COVID, and like, yet you go back to the 1900s, like, dude, how many things could you fucking die of? You know what they would have done for a fucking vaccine for anything?
Anything, yeah.
They would have fucking, dude, you'd have a fucking line of people down the street with their arm out. Are you kidding me? Because and that's my point, is like, we're like at this point where we like know too much, but not quite enough yet. And like, so it's kind of like, I don't know.
I think it's the remains to be seen for certain people. Like,
but
what is
everything
is this good or bad? Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right.
Tomorrow remains to be seen. Like,
you're absolutely right. But there's some certainty for people that, like, hey, more than likely I'm waking up tomorrow. Yeah. But at the same time, when you're hearing, oh my God, this technology, and they hooked up these two supercomputers, and then they formed their own language, and then they got a little crazy, and we just unplugged them, and it's like, okay, well, that's interesting.
Sure.
like, is that scary? I don't know. It's the fear of the unknown that I think really, it's such an innate human quality.
But you know what this really comes from? And fuck any of that in my mind.
Yeah.
It's the first time since Neanderthals that we have been, our apex status is being challenged.
I can see that. But you're saying our apex status is being challenged by a technology.
No, by anything. Like anything. Like you're telling me we'd be less afraid of a fucking giant that popped out of the sky? Like, if there was a giant who's bulletproof, who's like 300 feet tall and could just like step on the fucking White House and it's out of commission. Yeah. You know what? that's the same thing. Like, because
I gotcha.
the fear is the same, right? Like,
I gotcha. I don't think, God, there was, Bobcat Goldthwait did these like twisted, almost like, God, what was it? The Twilight Zone kind of stories. And he had Danny Pudi from Parks and Rec, who's fucking hysterical, do this one episode. Did we talk about this once? No. Basically it came out around when they hooked up those two supercomputers, and that really happened where they made their own language.
No, we've talked about that on the show, I think.
So the whole premise was Danny Pudi was this computer scientist that was in that lab. Right? And he hooked them up and things went crazy and they shut him down. Well, Danny turned it back on and he goes like, look, can you guys save the human race? So, he gets fired and he goes home because he turned the fucking computers back on. And I'm probably butchering the story. But every electronic device starts attacking humans. Right? And the whole time you're going, oh my God. And the story, it's so old. I'm not fucking, I'm not going to, there's plenty of spoilers here, but go watch the series. It's fun. Everything starts attacking humans. So everybody destroys all their electronics. Wow. And, the opening scenes of this show are everybody getting in their car, not looking at the other people, driving to work, not having any socialization interaction whatsoever. At the end of the episode, every person in their little boxes kind of neighborhood, everybody has the same, community, suburbia, townhome kind of thing. Everybody's hauling all their electronics out to the curb for the trash. That's funny. All the people start looking at each other and going like, hey, I've never spoken to you before, know? And it's like, oh, and then they get randomly he gets a letter in the mail that says you're welcome.
That's funny.
It just basically destroyed technology.
But you know what though? Like, that's also one of the options, right? Like, we could just decide that, like, okay,
go back to being Luddites. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck this thing. Pull the plug. Let's just get out of it. Right. Like, I mean, you see what's happening with all the Facebook and all those people, like, even like, look, the top producers in tech, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, all fucking under anti-monopoly right now from multiple countries and like aggressively trying to be brought down.
I don't know if I'm against that.
No. I'm not. I mean, honestly,
I would like to see it in every industry, though.
I'm not for or against it, but but what I do think is funny about it is that they brought it on themselves. Like, this is not, you definitely are to blame. Like, let's just be clear there. But two, we know now the damaging consequences of all that, and we condone it still anyway. We still base business decisions around it. We base marketing decisions around it. So what does that say about us? You know what I mean? Like, we know now. This isn't like 1955 where you didn't know. You kind of had a good idea that cigarettes weren't terribly good for you, but you kind of still could hide behind like, oh, I don't know.
No, we don't. Yeah, it's
we're past that.
The research isn't out. Yeah.
No, we're past that. We all know. Yeah. Social media is fucking the most awful thing that's ever been created in the history of humanity.
Oh God.
And guess what? Every one of us is on it at least once a day. Most of us, many more than that.
Many times. Yeah.
Every business out there that gives a shit about anything is on social media.
Yeah.
Like, it's everywhere. And we know it's absolutely tragically bad for us. Like, if cigarettes were a 1, this is like a 200.
I believe we'll know about the impacts relatively soon, to our psyche, to our
we already are. Look at all the studies that have come out about the kids in COVID and the learning gap thing and the psychological deficiencies that cohort has. I mean, it's these stats are here and like that, but that's my point. Like, what we're gonna do right now anyway. That cohort of data that data about that cohort is out, and we all know about it. And most of us have kids in that cohort, so like it affects us at a personal level. So we all say, you know what, we're very concerned about that. But when the kids go to bed, you're in bed, 99% of the people pick up their phone
and they're on social media
themselves. And so it's like, look, I'm not judging people for it. I do it myself. But I mean, honestly, I haven't posted on Facebook outside of birthdays in years.
Yeah.
And it's not because I have some like, vendetta against Facebook, but I'm like, it's not just that. I just actually had to like follow somebody on Instagram. I looked at my personal Instagram. I had 5 pictures in my entire Instagram feed ever.
Yeah.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, that is it. There was nothing. And I'm like, oh, I guess I don't use this very much. Can't tell you if I've ever sent a tweet outside of business.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm like, look, man, I got so many other things to worry about in the world. Like if I dive into this,
you're missing something else.
I'm missing something else. And it, like I said, it's just a personal decision. But like, I mean, I got those Apple Vision Pro for a client to like check them out. And guess what? You know what I can see easily? Fucking Wally, like straight up.
You're gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you are fucking, dude, when you turn because you can dial the augmented reality in or out. When you dial it all the way in and you go to the moon, my kids even said this, you get cold. Like you get shivers because you are fucking literally on the moon. Like I'm not kidding you. It is fucking grippingly realistic. Like
that's crazy because like, like I like the Oculus that I have.
Yeah, this is not, I have one of those. It's not that. It's
clunky. And I, my social media person, she went to the Apple store. She got a fitting. She had the private thing. And she was like, you don't even understand.
No, you don't understand.
She goes, imagine you being at a concert and you're on stage with the band.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, that's what it is. You feel like you're standing on the stage.
You know what we should do? Oh my God, you would be awesome to do this with. We should film an acupuncture, like get somebody who volunteers for it.
Yeah.
Film an entire, like a VR 180 filming of you doing an acupuncture session.
Yeah.
And then there's these websites now that are popping up to show 180 content. And people are just posting shit all over the world like crazy. Like, here's me at a waterfall. Here's me. And I'm like, no one's really using that for marketing yet. But like, can you imagine? Like,
do we rent the camera? How does that work?
I'm actually, funny enough, for a different client looking into a camera right now. So I have only a little bit. There's the new mirrorless Canon series have a lens, a stereoscopic lens that fits that, but not the EOS. And all of my Canon cameras and lenses are EOS. You can get an EOS adapter for the R series because what it is without the mirror the sway on the mirror, you could have a lower back focus. So the lenses are actually closer to the sensor on the R series because there's no mirror than they are on the EOS because there's a mirror. So like the EOS lenses, if you got an adapter for the camera, all it does is space out the back focus like it used to be on the EOS. So you could use all your glass from EOS on the R, but this is an R lens, so I can't use it on.
You can't go
on my EOS lens because I can't decrease the back focus. So, so I would have to get a new body, but the lens is compelling, and it's like $2,000 for the lens. What I don't like about that though is you need a subscription so to process it. And I don't love that idea. So there's another company where the camera is $2,000, but it comes with the lens and it's free. So you use Adobe Premiere to edit it. So it's free.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, all right. So I don't think you'd rent it. I think you'd figure out a way to finance it through like, can I do enough cool shit with it to justify a $2,000 price point? And if you had like regular photographic tools, like a gimbal and like, like you put the camera on a gimbal and you actually would film it, you could walk around and it's like smooth pan and all that neat stuff, but like I have all that stuff already, right? Like I've been shooting for years. So like I've got all that stuff. So really all you would need, and like the H6 to use for sound, then that's how that would work. But anyway, anyway, like I said, the technology is going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. But
be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.